This is a Shane Plays podcast extra. Content that was not recorded as part of the live Shane Plays radio show. Enjoy.
Shall we play a game?
Why, yes. I believe we shall.
Oh, I got a live one here.
This audio is from the December 6th Dave Elswick show on 101.1 FM The Answer out of Little Rock with myself, Dave, and geek megabrain and comic book writer Mark Pellegrini, where we discuss The Mandalorian, Star Wars 9, Han shooting first or not, a little bit of Rogue One. Hope you like it.
Now, back to Dave Elswick on 101.1 FM, The Answer.
All right, I'm going to tell you right now that Mark Pellegrini is probably the ultimate Mandalorian fan.
Oh, am I?
Yeah, I
think so. I haven't seen today's episode, though.
I don't know.
I'm going to watch it when I get home.
Episode 5, you haven't watched it
Yeah,
yet?
so we can only talk up through episode 4, all right? Ground rules here, people.
Yeah, okay, and we have to say...
And we got to be careful
spoilers.
because if we tell them the end of episode 1, we're going to really break a big surprise.
I think that cat's out of the bag,
yeah,
though.
so
I really think that cat's out of the bag.
It's a meme now. It's all over.
Okay,
it's Baby Yoda.
Now,
yeah,
what we can do is,
yeah.
I think we can say there is a, without giving the context of what's going on, there is a alien that is a young member of Yoda species.
Okay.
Yeah?
It's probably Yoda.
So for people who
It
haven't
hasn't
watched,
started talking backwards yet.
well, so people who haven't watched Mandalorian yet, it takes place right after Return of the Jedi, so it's the immediate sequel to the original Star Wars trilogy. So the Mandalorian is not Boba Fett. Boba Fett's got eaten by the Sarlacc in Return of the
he's
Jedi.
already dead.
So he's either dead or he's in something's stomach right now. And
Right.
people are calling it Baby Yoda because it doesn't have a name. It's not Yoda because...
No, but Yoda's already around.
Yeah, well, Yoda died in Return of the Jedi.
Well, I have heard a theory that perhaps it's a clone of Yoda.
It could be.
But we don't know that.
It's
I mean,
not
it's all
it's not a
speculation.
reincarnation of Yoda because they say that the baby is 50 years old by this point, and Yoda died in Return of the Jedi, so it can't be a reincarnation of Yoda. There are some theories like why the remnants of the Empire are trying to get Baby Yoda, or the child is what he's called right now. But basically, the plot is that the Mandalorian, who's this bounty hunter, has to protect the Baby Yoda from all these other bounty hunters and mercenaries and the remains of the Empire who are trying to get Baby Yoda for whatever reason they want. And I've watched 4 episodes of it so far, and it's far more intriguing than you might think it is. From that plot synopsis, you might think it doesn't sound very good, but it is very much a Western, samurai, and it's classic Star Wars.
And when we say Western, I feel like spaghetti Western.
Oh, yeah, like Sergio, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's...
Which I watched today. I watched A Fistful of Dollars today. Yeah.
I love those movies, man. The Ugly is one of my favorite characters in movie history. I can't remember what his character is, but he's the Ugly in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, right? I love him.
Eli Wallach.
He was also the lead gang member in Seven Samurai, wasn't he? I think he was. Not Seven Samurai, but Magnificent Seven.
Yeah.
He was the lead
Eli
gang
Wallach.
member. Right.
That's who he is. That's who we're talking
he's got
about.
that beautiful rat face.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to The Mandalorian. It's really, really good.
Yeah,
Yeah, it is.
It's written and produced by Jon Favreau, who directed Iron Man and a lot of movies. So Jon Favreau, we were talking about it before, he's a fanboy of everything he does. When he did the Iron Man movie, he went into it as an Iron Man fanboy, and it shows. He made an Iron Man movie for Iron Man fans. He's a Star Wars fanboy, and he's making a Star Wars TV show for Star Wars fans. If you felt put off by the Last Jedi and The Force Awakens and the recent movies, if like the new stuff, the sequel trilogy is not doing it for you, The Mandalorian is what you want to watch to get your Star Wars fix.
Well, it's also like they're not trying to do the typical, we got to have a lot of diversity, we have to show strong ethnic or strong women. It's just, they're just telling a good, interesting story. And if a strong woman character happens to be in there or whatever, fine, but that's not...
What's her name again from episode 4? She was... The character's name.
Dune Cass or Cass Dune or something like that.
So she shows up and she gets into a fight with the Mandalorian and they end up like boxing each other to a standstill.
Yeah.
But it's not, you may think a lot of people complain like, "Oh, that's woke. That's woke. That's
It
one of
didn't
those
come
strong
off that way to
independent." It
me.
did not come off that
Yeah.
way. If you watch it, she gets punched in the face. She gets punched in the stomach. She
Right.
gets knocked on the ground. She brings him down on the ground with
Right.
her. It's very much an ugly knock-around brawl, and she's not. And the actress they got to play her she's a mixed martial artist, so she's got a lot of muscle. She's very big. She's not the wispy thin
She was pretty great.
Scarlett
She
Johansson
reminded me of
kind of
Lucy
thing.
Lawless, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, she
Little
looks
bit.
like she could kick
You-
someone's butt.
yeah.
She doesn't look
you
like
do
Scarlett
not
Johansson.
recognize Gina
Yeah.
Carano.
Gina Carano?
I didn't know who
That's
she
who
was
she
either.
is.
Yeah.
That's who it is.
I know
mean,
she's
she
been in
was
some
in
stuff, but I didn't know.
was it the last Fast and the Furious movie
I
or the
don't
one
know.
before?
Yes,
yeah.
He was in that.
I mean, I saw she was in
Yeah.
some stuff.
And
but-
I thought she was great in that.
But see, the
episode.
thing is, if this was following some of the reasoning behind the new Star Wars trilogy, then the Mandalorian would have been female,
yeah,
right? I mean, this is what I'm saying. There's
Yeah.
none of that. It's just
It's not-
escapist entertainment.
Yeah, so-
And- yeah. Well, what I was going to say, in the Baby Yoda is genius because they got so much free advertising off Baby Yoda on the internet.
Well, Disney actually tried to suppress the Baby Yoda memes and were sending
were they
Twitter.
really?
So at first they were.
We're
They're
gonna
sending-
show
Jon Favreau
you.
Yeah,
step
they
in?
were sending cease and desists all across Twitter and Facebook and Tumblr and all social media places.
Dummies.
And they stopped after like less than a week because they realized like this is free advertising.
nothing
and
but
so they
free
held back,
advertising.
and they stopped sending out the C&Ds because
Well, I heard Jon Favreau also kind of
he kind of said, "Hey,
expressed
knock
his
it off,
support.
guys." Yeah.
But the other thing, let me tell you why Baby Yoda is what Lucas wanted Jar Jar to be. This cute little character that everyone would love, and with a little bit of comic relief or whatever. But every time, I'm not lying. Me and Sheila watch The Mandalorian. I wait till she can watch it to watch the new
Right,
episodes.
okay.
Every time Baby Yoda comes on, you know what she does?
What?
Aw.
There you go.
Every time.
That's the thing, is
Aw.
because Baby Yoda is a good example of less is more for that
Right.
sort of thing, for comedy
Right.
relief. He's there just enough to get a smile out of you, not even a laugh sometimes, just a
Right.
smile. He's not oppressive. He's not constantly doing comedy
And
relief
he's
shtick.
cute as a
Exactly, and he doesn't feel. He's not like the Porgs from The Last Jedi, where those things felt like they were put in there for merchandising, and they had Porg merchandise ready like 6 months in advance of that movie. Baby Yoda, they don't even have like the toys ready for it. Like they just like rushed out a plush toy in time for Christmas, and that's the only Baby Yoda thing out
I
there.
will say the interesting story on the Porgs for me personally is, from what I understand, they were filming on an island,
It had penguins on it.
and those
they had to-
they were puffins or penguins or
Yeah.
something, and they were like, it's going to cost us so much to CGI all these birds out, so they ended up making them.
Now that would have been
Porgs.
fine, except they
Right.
started putting the Porgs, like they gave them all these scenes with Chewbacca.
Right,
They
the
put
little
them in the
cute
cockpit.
stuff.
It's like, and then
Right.
they put them in all the advertising and the trailers and
Well, I
everything.
have to
and
say,
they overdid it.
I'm
on
a
them.
shameless Porg lover,
well,
so
yeah,
it worked
we
on
can't
me.
Was
beat eye to eye
Mr.
on
Poppins in it?
What?
Was
Mr. Poppins
was he-
Porgs?
was he-
Oh, God.
No, but that might be a short. But back to the Mandalorian, it feels like Solo, which I actually liked the Solo movie. Fine, it's an enjoyable space western. It has grit. It's got that grit, and Mandalorian has the grit.
The
Oh,
first
yeah.
5 minutes of the first episode of Mandalorian, it's got some violence in it. And it's the kind of violence where, like, you wonder, like, why can't they just show Han Solo blowing Greedo away?
Right.
You know, if they can show
Well, I heard
this,
they changed that again.
They did.
I heard they changed it again on
Disney
Disney
Plus
Plus.
changed it again.
I don't even. Yeah.
So the
Did Han shoot first?
all right, so here's what happens.
Han never
here's,
shoots.
Here's the timeline of the changes for Han shoots first. Original movie, Greedo doesn't even shoot. Han just blows him away.
Han blows him away.
1990 special edition, Han digitally dodges the bullet that Greedo shoots
Yeah,
and then
from
shoots
that
Greedo.
far
And it
away.
looked really bad.
It looked
and then
awful.
The Blu-rays and DVD, Han doesn't move. They just shoot nearly at the same time. And this one on Disney Plus, they added a scene where Greedo basically says, like in his alien language, draw. So now it's like a competition,
come
and then
on.
they shoot each other.
The whole thing.
It's dumb.
We got to get to a break.
Yeah, we
right?
got a break.
Oh.
We'll talk more
gotta talk
about
about
it.
this when we come
And
back.
we are going to talk about Star Wars 9. I know Mark doesn't want to, but I'm
I'll
going to
be one of the
force
first
you
in
to.
line.
Oh,
I'll
right.
be one of the first.
I'm
I'm
going to take
a
a
huge
break.
Star Wars nerd.
Here is the news. We continue. Go back. We got a few more things to say about The Mandalorian.
Absolutely. So The Mandalorian, I just want to point this out with The Mandalorian. And what separates The Mandalorian from the sequel trilogy is Jon Favreau. He understands how to do familiarity to make it feel like a Star Wars movie or a Star Wars setting.
Explain what you're saying.
So
familiarity.
So here's the way. All right. So here's the way Jon Favreau does it with the Mandalorian: is that when the Mandalorian goes into a building or to a planet, there are familiar-looking aliens around. So there are Ugnaughts from Empire Strikes Back, which are the little like midget pug-looking people. There are Jawas.
That he
And
has
Nick
to learn
Nolte
to
plays
ride.
an
Nick
Ugnaught.
Nolte plays one. It's
Nick
great.
Nolte plays an
But
Ugnaught.
there
Is
and
he
there
really?
are
Is that him?
yeah, and in the fourth episode, there are these Marauder aliens, and they're the aliens that were working Jabba's skiff guards in Return of the Jedi. And like all these aliens are just ones you
I haven't
recognize.
got that far yet, so I can't wait.
And so that's the thing is that all these aliens are just aliens that you recognize from the movies. They're just set dressing, but they're there. And as soon as you see them, you know that it's
It
a Star.
establishes
It's like
it's the
this is
Star
Star
Wars
Wars
universe, right.
But the way J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson did it with the sequel trilogy is like, oh, we need to make it feel like Star Wars. Okay, well there's a Death Star. We got X-wings. And they're going to do a trench run. They're going to blow up the Death
Right.
Star, and they just recreate scenes
Well,
wholesale. And that's not doing familiarity correctly.
The
It's
Force
just
Awakens was a
remaking it.
retelling of the
I
first
know,
Star
and-
Wars
Yeah,
movie
sure,
for a
of
new
course.
generation, which that bugged me.
It was a reboot.
Yeah, but the
Whether they want to say so or not, it was
a
a
reboot.
Yeah.
It was a
but it
soft
got me in
reboot.
it.
But yeah, I've got to agree with Mark. Mandalorian's amazing. That's the way to do it. It's so rare today in online anger culture. Nobody's fighting over this. Everybody's
Look at
enjoying
all the
it.
goodwill that this show has generated. Now, remember for the past 2 years when no one could say anything nice about Star Wars, and all you heard was just in stereo people complaining about it, and suddenly this show comes out,
Everybody
and
loves
everyone
it.
loves Star Wars. Everyone loves The Mandalorian. That should tell you something. All these people who are hardcore Star Wars haters for the past 2 years are praising The Mandalorian, and that should be some incentive to tell he's doing something right.
And it's also one thing I like about it. It is expanding the Star Wars. I hate to say mythology, but I'll say mythology, especially the Mandalorian part, because we're learning more about
Well, so-
Mandalorian culture.
The Mandalorians were in the Clone Wars cartoon series, the CGI one, and they had a big part in that show. They were different in that one. They've also been in the books and the comics and
Well,
things like that.
the lore is they used to basically be like the Klingons of the Star Wars universe. They were a very warlike planet full of and they had honor and they had galaxy-wide respect.
And they took their helmets off a lot. In the
They
Clone
took their
Wars
helmets
cartoon.
off, but now there's this, they're all on hard times and they're expanding on that. Like he's getting his armor made when he brings in and there's the covert and all, which I don't want to go too deep into. But another thing that it's doing that I liked a lot was Jon Favreau and the designers of the show gave a huge salute to the Star Wars Holiday Special
They did.
because Boba Fett was actually first introduced in an animated sequence in the and I like Star Wars Holiday Special. I've got bootleg
I like the
copies.
Rift Tracks version of it.
Yeah, well, if you delete a couple of scenes, it's not that.
The cartoon
Yeah.
is really good.
The
I'll say
cartoon's great, and I've never seen an animation like that since then. It's a very unique style. But the weapon that he uses in the show
that. The disintegrator, yes, that's what Boba Fett
is
used.
what Boba
Yeah.
Fett, that very distinctive, almost tuning fork looking, is straight out of the Star Wars Holiday Special.
And
Yeah.
so they also bring in some really obscure stuff, like when he's in I think it's the second episode, it might be the first one. It's the first one. It's when the Mandalorian is trying to ride one of those lizards and he keeps falling off of it, and the Nick Nolte Ugnaught tells him like, "You're a Mandalorian. You're the people who rode the Mythosaur."
Right.
The Mythosaur is that cattle skull signet that all the Mandalorians have. That Boba Fett
Oh,
has.
see, I didn't even catch that.
Exactly,
Nice.
and so when you see Boba Fett for the first time in the Star Wars Holiday Special, he's riding this like brontosaurus-looking thing. It's that Mandalorians are historically known. It was even in the old Marvel comics. They're known for riding beasts.
What
and
I
that's part of their
like,
history.
I like
Interesting.
how in the Mandalorian, in that first episode, when he told him you got to ride one of those. We can't. You're not going to use a land speeder or something.
Right.
Like that. You got to ride that. And how he was having problems until he went up and he made a relationship touch of
Yeah.
it. I thought that was pretty cool.
Right, he treated
Yeah,
it
I
with
need to go back
respect.
and rewatch it. I mean, because there's so much good
Well,
stuff.
that's
in
what I
there,
like
but-
about it too. Is that the main character, is just called the Mandalorian. He doesn't have a real name
You
yet,
don't know who
but
he
he's
is.
got a lot of faults. He gets beat up a lot. He falls on his face. He's not invincible. He has armor, but he doesn't have plot.
He jumps
armor.
without
Well,
thinking
yeah,
a
half
lot.
the time he tries to use his flamethrower, it goes wrong on him.
never works,
He
yeah.
doesn't have the rocket pack yet. because he's like, I got to get me one of those.
Yeah, he can
So-
be badass. Like, there are
Right.
scenes where he goes full John Wick on people, but he's not invincible, and you can tell that he's vulnerable, and that's what I like about the character. He's not like Rey, where everything comes
Right.
easy to her in those sequel movies. Like, this is a character who has to fight for every inch that he gets.
Well,
Yeah.
you know, and the other thing in the first episode, because I really like the first episode. It really,
And that's the only one you've seen,
Yeah, that's
right?
all I've
Yeah.
seen, right? Because I watched it 3 times because I like the way they're setting up everything.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And the droid that's in it, and how they use the droid to bring in some humor
IG-11?
into it.
IG-11, yes.
That IG-11 is perfect. There's some. I can't remember. Is it the first or second episode where he keeps opening up his chest?
It's the first one.
Is that the first one where he keeps
Yeah.
trying to self-destruct?
Yeah, he's trying to
Which is great,
He's like,
'cause-
stop!
Well, that's
Yeah.
that's another great piece of like familiarity. I mean,
Yeah.
you recognize that robot because a similar model, the IG-88,
Well, I
was
assumed
in.
it was IG-88.
Yeah,
until
so IG-88 was like one of the bounty hunters that was assembled in Empire Strikes Back that didn't do anything. But you recognize him when you see him. This is IG-11, which is like the same type of robot. Now you finally get to see him in action. And some IG units were in the Clone Wars cartoon, but you know,
Right.
it's familiarity. You recognize the robot, but the robot's a different character doing something
Right.
different. And it's just one of the things
It's
that
good
separates
stuff.
it. Yeah.
I think that The Mandalorian is the kind of Star Wars that we got in the 70s and 80s. Like, I watch all the Star Wars now because I'm a Star Wars fan. But everybody watched Star Wars in the 70s and 80s because it was universally accessible to everybody.
Yeah.
And my wife, who is not a sci-fi, but you know, she likes The Mandalorian. You know what I'm saying? So they've hit that perfect sweet spot where it's going to satisfy the nerds like me, but anybody can enjoy it.
Well, it reminds me more of the old Star Wars that I grew up with in the early 90s, the Dark Horse Comics era, the Del
Right.
Rey novel era, that sort of pre-prequel era Star Wars. It seems it takes a lot of its inspiration from that era of Star Wars. We talked about how like the holiday special stuff is in there. There's a lot of references to things from
and
like
you,
the
you
Marvel
finally
comics.
get to see a space toilet.
Yes, you do get to see a space
He's like, "Can I
toilet."
go use your back, too?"
In fact, I do think that's the first time a toilet
That's
showed
I
up in
think the first
Star
time
Wars.
it's been shown. But I do want to, if you don't mind, Dave, I wanted to real quick revisit the Han Solo thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
What the thing about Han Solo that bugs me that they keep changing it is that was one of the best establishing scenes of a character ever. That told you everything you needed to know about Han Solo at that point in
Well,
his
that
life.
he was underhanded and dirty. He would shoot someone under a table just to get to weasel out of something.
If it's me or you,
Yeah.
it's you. And he's fast. He's it establishes cleverness because he's distracting Greedo with his hand up on the wall, so Greedo's looking up there while he's while he's pulling it. It established so much about his character.
Well, that's also why we didn't need a prequel movie because
Right.
that kind of just takes away a lot of that mystique.
Well, and then I will say though that I didn't want him to make the Solo movie, but I think Han Solo is a character that's better the less you know about him. But I did enjoy Solo. I think it was better than it got credit for.
I liked it.
Yeah,
I
it's
enjoyed
a
it.
space western, you know, and I liked. Yeah, I don't know. We're not talking about Solo. We're talking about whatever. But it really bugs me that they changed it because I think that by the end of the first trilogy, Han Solo's kind of become a good guy, and he wasn't a good guy then. So it shows you how far he's come.
Well,
Exactly.
If
Yeah.
you watch the movie Solo,
Yeah.
and then watch A New Beginning, you could see the difference in Solo and from New Beginning because he was mitigating. He was more of a roguish bad guy instead of
Right.
being quote a bad guy.
By the beginning of the first Star Wars movie, he's a full-on space pirate. At the end of Solo, he's a good guy that is starting to get into the underworld, right? Because he's trying to do the right
Well, it's
thing.
one of my grievances with the sequel trilogy is that it completely undermines all of his character development from the original trilogy. He goes, when we pick up with him in the sequels, he's a failed father, a failed husband. He's gone back to
Yeah.
being a smuggler. He's
Yeah.
exactly where he was when we met him in A New Hope.
Well, that's
And,
what
like,
Dave's
that's-
talking about. It's a reboot.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's,
it's a reset.
what
for
a
the
waste
new
of time.
generation. Yeah.
That's exactly what
Yeah,
it was.
it was. It's a retelling of a
Well,
New Hope.
every character you loved in the original trilogy fails, and when we pick them up in the sequel trilogy, every single one of them is a failure. Even R2-D2 went to sleep for like 20 years.
Well, and I
It's
think
just
that's
sad.
why, especially The Last Jedi, I think a lot of
And Luke is just washing his hands of everybody.
Yeah, he's just going to an island to chill.
And
for
that's
20
why
years,
I think so many people have responded negatively. There's other reasons, but one of the main reasons is they broke the hero's journey to introduce new characters. So to give the new characters they're introducing a hero's journey, they had to devastate the other people's hero's journeys. Do you know what I'm talking about that? The hero's journey side.
Yeah, but the problem is that there's a disconnect. Even the prequel trilogy, so the best description I've ever heard of the prequel trilogy is that it's a good story told poorly. And that's what I'd agree about. As a compromise, I would agree with that.
It's a Shakespearean tragedy.
It's a very interesting story, just told with some very bad direction and execution. But the sequel trilogy, the prequel still at least segue into the original trilogy fairly well. The original trilogy does not segue into the sequel trilogy.
Jarring.
There's so much time that's missing in between. There's too many new characters that we've never seen before.
And that's why Rogue was so good.
I liked Rogue One a lot. So when it comes to the two things I've liked out of Disney Star Wars, I liked Rogue One and I'm liking The Mandalorian.
Rogue One was awesome.
And
Rogue One's fantastic.
I talked to some people at the convention a couple weeks ago, like Graham Nolan and some people, and they were saying that they didn't like Rogue One because they felt the characters were forgettable. But when you get to the end of the movie, you understand why they're forgettable.
Cassian Andor is not a forgettable character.
I mean, so
or is that his name, Cassian?
Well, that's the thing. Cassian, all those characters.
Neither is the woman.
I know.
Yeah, neither of them are
But that's the
forgettable.
thing is that they all served such an important purpose in the grand narrative of Star Wars, but they're also forgotten. They
had to be forgotten.
They had one job to do, and they did it, and then they all paid the price for it. But it's
had
kind
to
of
be
sad,
forgotten.
and that that's a lot of people in war pay the ultimate price to get
That
us
was
where
a
we
nod
were, and it's
to
sad.
the many
Dozen.
people who lost their lives in World War II.
Well, that was the closest that the Star Wars live action universe has ever come to showing what it's really like to be in a resistance.
That's exactly right. It was a great movie. I really liked it.
Like at the beginning, Cassian has to shoot his fellow friend because the guy
And
is hurt and
that's
can't
the other
move.
thing is that
I'm like, wow.
At the start of Rogue One, I mean, he kills the informant, and that's showing that this guy, even though he's a rebel, he's not a great guy. And you're like, well, there needs to be some sort of comeuppance for him if he's going to shoot an innocent person in cold blood. Well, he doesn't survive the movie.
Well,
so.
if you remember the speech that's given before they go to try to get the Death Star plans, the reason most of those guys volunteered is because they'd done terrible things and they were looking for redemption.
Exactly. It's a very dark story, and it's a very satisfying film. I mean,
It's a good movie.
I never
Who was
understand
the
people don't
director
like
of
it.
that?
Gareth Edwards.
The
That's
same guy
right.
that
Did Godzilla.
the first Godzilla movie.
Yeah, and he said that he drew on World War II.
Sure.
Right?
It's the Dirty Dozen.
From it.
You know,
Yeah.
It's the
and
Dirty Dozen.
it has such a bold ending where you would not expect them to get away with that, in a Star Wars movie. But they did it, and they went for it. It doesn't feel like it was trying to sell a toy line, even though there were toys, and they didn't sell very well because of the ending. But it was a movie where it's like, this is a finite, encapsulated story.
Yeah,
Here it is.
Did you ever see the
Getting
action
that
figures? They were
binding-
just lumps of charred
That's
ash.
what I was going to say. It was just ashes that you bought for
Sorry,
your.
I didn't mean to steal it.
Anyway,
Oh,
we'll
like my
take a
Aunt
break.
Beru and Uncle Owen action
Yeah, we're
figures.
not going to have any time left over for...
All right, a break. We come back. We'll give you our hopes for Star Wars 9.
Stimulating talk with Dave Elswick, 101.1 FM. The Answer.
Yeah, I got to put these on. You want to hear it? You want to hear what they sound like?
Are we back on?
Okay. We're back on.
Dave's grandson.
This is Eli, everybody.
Eli
You've
is in
seen
the-
pictures
is
of
in
him.
the-
This is
yeah,
my
I just took
grandson.
pictures.
He's 2 3/4 years old.
Hey,
See
it's
that?
a good age.
See the red light over there? See that red light? Wave at it.
You're on
Wave at
candid
it.
camera,
Wave.
pal.
Say go like this.
I'll send
Say
this to you,
hi.
Dave.
And there it is. He got his hand in.
He's got a big
All right.
smile on his face. Yeah, he
mom,
knows
That's a
there
good
There you
age.
go. You ready? You go.
You're old enough to
Get
walk
mama.
around and inflict your
Hold on.
will.
And,
You're young
and
enough.
all hooked up
you're
here.
young enough where you
Okay,
can't
go ahead.
remember anything in case you embarrass yourself.
And
so.
nobody really expects you to do the right thing.
All right, let's finish up the show. All right, enough about my grandson because I could keep him on the whole rest of the show. He's my man. Anyway, real quickly, let's talk about Star Wars 9. Comes out next weekend.
Yeah, well.
I know that you're on it,
Yeah,
okay?
yeah,
I
yeah,
understand
yeah.
how you feel about
Pouty.
it, Mark.
Yeah.
You're not even going to see if they get it right finally.
Two out of 3 movies are bad. What does it matter if the third one's even any good?
But see, my whole problem is I don't think, as a whole, the 7th one or the 8th one were overly bad.
They're not terrible. They could have just been They could have
They
just
could have been a whole lot
resonated
better.
stronger.
Yeah, well, they got
Well,
the
so
wrong
here's
person.
my
to
problem.
Get John Favreau.
Okay.
He would have done it
So
really
here's
good.
my problem with the sequel trilogy in general, and just as an overarching narrative. With the original trilogy, it was 3 movies, and just going into the first one, you knew what the point of those movies were. It was the rebels had to defeat the Empire, defeat Darth Vader, and save the day. The prequel trilogy, just going into the first one, you knew what the point of that was.
Here's where
Skywalker,
Darth Vader came from.
Anakin Skywalker had to become Darth Vader. The Empire had to rise. With the sequel trilogy, what is the point? The Resistance has to fight the First Order, except everyone we've seen in the First Order has been incompetent so far, so there's no threat. There's no tension. Like, Kylo Ren is 0 for 2 fighting Rey so far. This guy Hux, the other general, is just a loser who's constantly getting berated. All the heroes, Snoke got killed in the second movie
I loved how they
unceremoniously.
trolled everybody. with
I thought
Snoke,
that was
personally.
there's no tension. What's the point? The good guys just have to beat the bad guys. Where is this all going? I mean, I don't care. They haven't made me interested.
Now,
in
J.J. Abrams
Yeah.
has said in this 9th movie, he is there to tie all the parts together.
Everything together.
And it seems like to me, tie what together from the first 6? I don't know if there's
the
nothing
first
to
6 told
tie
a complete
together.
story. There
It's
wasn't-
Yeah.
the period on the Skywalker saga. It's
Well-
supposed to end because the Skywalker saga.
Well, then
Is-
his saga ended last movie.
Well, no, Rey is or somebody is a Skywalker.
Well, Kylo
I mean,
Ren's a
they're-
Skywalker because
Yeah,
he's Leia's
Kylo
son.
Ren's a Skywalker. So I'll give my super quick take on this because we got about 3 or 4 minutes.
Yeah, about
All right.
4 minutes.
I don't cling fanatically to most fandoms, but I'm a Star Wars fan.
Yeah, I am too.
And ever since the prequels came out, starting with Phantom Menace, I've seen every Star Wars movie in the movies at the theaters a minimum of 4 times.
All right, multiple times.
Okay, so I'm just a big dork when it comes to Star Wars. I liked The Last Jedi. Now, I can see why people didn't, because here's the thing with Star Wars. It's space opera that's supposed to be escapist entertainment, and people are bringing all these things to it that they want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
But I understand why people didn't like The Last Jedi, because it just wrecked the hero's journey. It was Star Wars made for a 40-year-old,
It was
not
just
for a 13-year-old.
It was just a bad narrative. It was a movie that was not structured very well.
I mean, I thought it had some good. I could argue back and forth what I liked
that
about
entire detour onto the guilt planet where they all
Yeah, I
like,
hear that a lot.
casinos are bad. Oh, having
who
like
was the
race
director,
horses are
Ryan
bad.
Johnson?
Ryan
it.
Johnson.
I'll put
yeah.
it this way: it made me go watch his other movies, and I become a Ryan Johnson fan. But I understand people don't like it. I'm down with that.
Here's the thing about
But-
destroying the hero's arc.
Yeah,
Maybe somewhat.
yeah.
But Luke is still the hero at the end
I
of
thought
that movie.
the way Luke did at the end of Last Jedi was super cool,
Yeah.
but a lot of people didn't. Mark Hamill himself said, he's like, that wasn't Luke, that was... He came up with some other name in his head. He's like, I wasn't playing Luke, I was playing like...
Equal.
Yeah, some
That's
other
Luke
name
backwards.
like he did. He came up. He said, "I'm playing like Mark Skywalker. That's not Luke Skywalker."
Yeah.
So I understand that there's people that really don't like The Last Jedi, and I understand that there's people that were like that the Force Awakens could have been better. But as a Star Wars fan, hey, I'm like I finally understand because I'm not a sports guy. I finally understand what it's like to stick by a team when they're in their downs and their ups. You know what I'm saying?
Maybe that's
I
why
like
it didn't bother me, because
I-
I've been
I'm
a Cubs
talking
fan
about
all
it.
my life.
Yeah.
as a consumer,
Yeah.
I want to reinforce the behavior when Disney does good, like the
No, I get that.
when Disney does good,
Yeah.
like the Mandalorian, I'm going to buy the Blu-ray and I'm going to support them because Disney only listens to money. When Disney does something bad, like these sequel movies, the ones that I consider bad, don't like, I'm not going to
Aladdin.
give them my money. I'm not going to
Live
go see
action.
them. I'm not going to support them, and that's going to send the message that they might listen
And,
to.
and I get that because there's other entertainment. I feel,
you know,
but I'm
more
just a
Mandalorian,
hopeless,
less Rey.
I'm a hopeless Star Wars dork. It's one of
Yeah.
the few. Hey, it looks like Dave's trying to wrap
Yeah, I'm
us
going to
up.
give. I'm gonna
I
give
will
you,
definitely go see
I'm going
it.
to give you a minute and a half
Yeah.
between the two of you. I want to bring a couple. Star Trek 4 has been green lit. What do you think?
It's not the Star. It's not the Star Trek that I want, but
It's the same cast.
Yeah, it's Pine and all those
Yeah,
guys.
it is.
It's not the flavor of Star Trek that
It's
I
urban
want,
and all of them.
but for action movies, they're enjoyable.
Okay.
I saw the first two J.J. Abrams Star Trek movies, and he's much better at making Star Trek movies than he is Star Wars movies. I didn't see the third one, though. I heard it was good. I just didn't. It wasn't because I didn't want to see it. I just never got around to it. I'm not that big of a Star Trek guy.
The
to
third
be
one was
honest.
the most trackable.
That was
Yeah.
the one with Cumberbatch, wasn't it?
No, that was Into Darkness.
Oh, man,
which
I
I
liked,
liked, but a lot of people
liked
hate.
it a
I
lot.
like
Yeah,
that one.
that was the one with Khan. Yeah.
Star Trek
Yeah.
Beyond was the one where it was the old Federation ship was crashed on the planet and all this
Okay.
stuff.
All
And
right.
It felt Trek more than the other two movies.
Yeah, I'm not so. I watched the original '60s Trek on the Sci-Fi Channel when I was like 9.
Yeah.
You know, and I liked Lost in Space better. So you know.
Yeah,
Okay.
fair enough.
Another question came out. There's a trailer came out 2 days ago. The new Bond movie. Have you watched
Oh,
the
yeah.
new?
I'm
have you watched the new
excited
trailer?
for it because it seems like that they didn't
They've gone
go
back
woke on
again.
it. Yeah, it seems like they didn't go woke on it.
It's going to be harsh again.
They kind of kept that one on the down low. Like I haven't heard much hype for it, but I do kind of want to see it.
Quantum
Right.
of Solace was amazing, and I'm hoping this is more like.
Do you
that.
mean Spectre?
No.
Or Quantum of Solace was the second Daniel Craig
Yeah,
one that nobody liked.
Spectre was really good.
Spectre and Skyfall were good. It was Quantum of Solace that everybody hated.
Which one was it that felt like a 70s Bond movie but updated? He's like in a death trap with a laser coming at him and
That
all
was
that.
Spectre.
Was that Spectre?
Yeah, that was
That's
Spectre.
the one I
That's
liked.
the one with
then.
Blofeld. Yeah,
Last-
that was really
last
good.
That
but not
felt like,
least,
yeah.
Sunday, Wonder Woman trailer drops. Monday, Ghostbusters drops.
I'm
yeah, that's
jazzed
right.
for
They
Ghostbusters.
teased those Ghostbuster stills. It can't possibly be worse than the last Ghostbusters
Pellegrini's
movie. So,
just
you know.
excited that Holtzman's in it.
You know,
I'm messing
Mark
with you. man.
Pellegrini.
I'm messing with you.
Shane, thanks for coming
Yeah,
in.
always a
Take a
pleasure.
break. See you Monday.
This has been The Dave Elswick Show. Find him on Twitter and on Facebook at Dave Elswick.